Today we're reviewing nights 10, 11, and 12 in our sleep training journey. So let's see how Colton did. Night 10, I laid him down at 6:27. He wasn't crying right away. He actually laid there a few minutes and just kind of ate his fingers and looked around. And then he fussed a little bit, and at 7:34 he was asleep. He woke up at 4:34, and an hour later I went in and I nursed him. I feel like I kind of caved in this moment. My husband and I think we're both taken a little off guard because he was doing so well for, a few nights in a row. And we kind of thought we were over the hump. And then this one popped up, and then just crying for an hour. He was, he's not screaming down the house. He's never in a screaming down the house cry throughout this whole sleep training process. But when he's just constantly crying and crying and crying, showing no sign of going back to sleep, though I know, eventually he would have went back to sleep, but I totally caved. I fed him and then I laid him back down, and he slept for about 10 minutes, and then he popped back up awake, and then he went back to sleep 10 minutes later, and then he woke up at 5:55. So I went in and I nursed him again, because at this point I'm still a mess. I'm thinking the whole day, I've thrown off the whole day. And I nursed him for another 5 minutes. He went back to sleep. He slept from 6:10 and he went back to bed for an hour. So it was a very confusing morning. Now reading this, I wish that I wouldn't have caved. I wish that I would have stuck it out there with him. But that's what happened, in the moment you got to make those calls. It's a tricky call to make. Sometimes we make the right decision, sometimes we don't. At the moment I thought I was making the right decision, and looking back now, I wish I would have held out a little bit longer to see if he would have, I wish I would have held out another 10 or 15 minutes, got past that hour threshold, as hard as that is, but we didn't. So that was night 10, a little bit rocky. Night 11, he laid down at 6:30, laid there for a few minutes before he started crying, and then by 6:56 he was asleep, so it took him a little bit longer that night. And then at 7:02 he woke up again and was fussing a little bit, and then at 7:12, 10 minutes later, he was asleep. This was a very rocky night for us. He woke up at 3:22. And at 3:43, my husband went in to give him some comfort. And then again at 4:30 now, over an hour later from his initial wake up, my husband went in to give him some comfort again. And then at 4:43, he finally went to sleep. This was a particularly hard night for us. For me, this was a very hard night for me. For some reason, that cry, like I was crying with him that night. Probably for a few reasons. This was the second night in a row we had a really rocky time around the same time of night. So I'm starting to second guess my decisions in this whole process, and maybe he can't make it through the whole night because he, just because he was making it through a few consecutive nights, maybe they were just a fluke, and maybe he really is hungry because he's starting to wake up at the same time, and he's teething like crazy right now. His poor little cheeks are rosy and his nose is red almost every night before he goes to bed these last few days. So it was a really rough night, and that was the longest that he cried. An hour and 20 minutes, that was the longest. That was even longer than the first night when we laid him down and first started this program. He only cried for an hour and 15 minutes, and this time he went an hour and 20 minutes. So it was really, really, really tough. So he went to sleep at 4:43, and then at 5 o'clock he woke up again. So he slept for, not even 20 minutes. And then this time he went for a half an hour. He woke up at 5. My husband gave him some comfort at 5:10, and by 5:30 he was asleep, and then at 6:13 he was up for the day. Now, through this whole ordeal, one thing I did notice was he started to suck his fingers. So, it's kind of the silver lining. That's one step closer in his self-soothing process, is sucking on his fingers. And quite frankly, I'm hoping he finds that thumb soon. Night 12, last night, was a pretty good night. I put him down at 6:49 because he had a really good day for nap, which you'll definitely hear about in the daytime nap videos that we're doing along with these nighttime videos. So his bedtime was 6:49 on night 12, which was last night. And by 6:53, he was asleep, which is kind of ideal. Like, I really am trying to find that sweet spot, particularly with nap times, where you lay him down and he just fusses for a few minutes and then goes right to sleep. So he slept from 6:53 until 5:01. So because the last two mornings, or the last two early mornings, have been a little bit rocky, typically our wake up time was around 6 a.m. Once he started sleeping the whole night, his wake up time went from 7 a.m. to 6 a.m., which I'm completely fine with. 6 a.m. isn't a bad wake up time for me. I kind of naturally wake up around 6 a.m. anyhow. So this morning when he woke up at 5, now I have to make a decision. In the Sleep Sense program book that I had just read, you're supposed to leave them until wake up time. But for me, I'm thinking, okay, so I leave him to cry for an hour. I know he's gonna cry for an hour. And then I'm gonna get him up and I'm gonna nurse him and he's gonna eat. It's gonna take 20 to 30 minutes and it's gonna be nap time again. Like, so I'm trying to get out of nursing him to sleep. That's the big association that I'm trying to break here. And I just felt that I would be feeding right back into that. So I thought, I'm going to give him till 5:30 and see, if he's showing any signs of trying to get himself back to sleep by then. So I watched him. I'm always watching to see if he's sucking his fingers or assuming his sleep position, even if it's just for a moment. And none of that stuff kind of happened. So at 5:25, I got myself up and, went to the bathroom and kind of got ready for him and stuff like that. And I had him up at 5:30 and nursed him. So our day started a little bit early. And again, I don't think that's a really bad thing. We're still figuring out our schedule. And even once we're in a good schedule, I can't expect that he's never going to wake up before 6 a.m. And then from there, it's your choice as a mother of, are you going to get him out of his room at, 5:45, 5:30? Like, you have to figure out your own window in there of when an acceptable time is to pull him out of his crib. So this morning I made the decision that at 5:30 I was going to go get him up. I wasn't just going to let him cry that extra half an hour. I just really didn't see a positive outcome in doing that. So that is it for our nights. 10 and 11 were pretty rocky nights. 12, we're getting back to our regular schedule. Well, a regular good schedule if I'm sleeping, especially through that tricky time around the 4 a.m. hour. And hopefully tomorrow it gets even better, and the day after, and we're going back to 6 o'clock wake up. So make sure you join us for our daytime nap training videos, which I will link to this one here. If you're enjoying these conversations, please maybe give my video a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Thank you.